Hey, so hi there. Good morning, everybody. Firstly, my name's Helen. I'm a careers consultant here at Newcastle University Careers Service. Welcome to day 2 of our Find Your Future fortnight. So I am delighted today to be opening day 2 of our 2-week event series. Today is all about science and technology. So as part of this session, we'll be giving you an overview to help you understand how to break into science and technology, as well as providing a bit of an overview of what you can expect today. Before we get started, just a couple of things to be aware of. So you probably will have seen that we are recording this session. So just an FYI for those of you who would prefer to be off camera while the session is being recorded. This is what I'll be going through in this very short session this morning. So firstly, a very brief overview of both the science and the technology industries. We'll focus on some tips to help you if you are thinking of applying for roles in these areas. And we'll also have time for questions. So I'll be speaking for about 15 minutes or so this morning, and then the remainder of the time will be designated for questions. So do feel free to type questions in the chat box during the session, or equally at the end of the session, I'll stop the recording. And if you'd rather unmute yourself to ask a question, that's completely fine as well. Now, I know that science and technology is quite a big area in itself, and that some of you who are here this morning are probably more interested in the science side of things, some of you perhaps more interested in the tech side of things. So firstly, I'll do a really brief overview of the science industry. So firstly, the science industry has had a very high public profile over the last few years. The need for a skilled workforce across research, across academia, across healthcare, for very obvious reasons given the pandemic. Now, there are lots of different types of scientists, and here at Newcastle University, you might be a science student who's studying in the Faculty of Medical Sciences. You might be doing biomedical sciences, pharmacology, pharmacy, etc. But equally, there are scientists that sit within the university's Faculty of Science, Agriculture and Engineering. So you might be a chemist, you might be doing physics, biology, agriculture, environmental science, earth science, etc. So there are lots of different types of scientists, and what that means is there are lots of different types of role available within science across a wide range of industries and sectors. So a couple of examples here to just get your, to get you thinking. So food and beverage industry, life science and pharmaceuticals, biotechnology companies, for instance, as well. Lots of roles naturally within the healthcare system, both within the NHS as well as within perhaps private organisations as well. Roles within science education, that isn't just restricted to something like teaching, it could be science communication, outreach, etc. Opportunities to work in more of an environment or agriculture or land-based role as well. So lots of different types of roles available, and the types of roles that are maybe available to you will likely depend quite largely on your academic discipline and the subject that you've studied. Equally, if you're thinking about working in science, there are also a wide variety of environments that you might find yourself working in. So you might be working in a lab, perhaps you might be in a research and development role that requires you to perhaps be in the lab for the majority of your time. Equally, you might be more office-based. You might be field-based, going out collecting samples, etc., particularly if you're working in perhaps a surveying, a conservation, ecology type role. You might be working in a hospital. And I think as a science student, what I'd advise you to think about is to consider your preferences. So there's a bit of a cliche that if you want to work in science, you have to go and work in a lab-based role, and that is definitely not the case. So not all roles are lab-based. There are lots of science companies that are looking to recruit science graduates for roles outside of the lab as well, so business roles, marketing, etc., because you have a very good idea about their particular product service given your scientific background. So I'd really can get you to really think, if you're a science student, to really think about your preferences. What do you enjoy? Do you enjoy the lab-based side of things? If not, there are plenty of options for you if you're still keen to work in science and use the skills from your degree. Now, thinking about scientific employers, there are lots and lots of different types of employers recruiting students and graduates for scientific related roles. One thing to be aware of is that larger organisations will tend to run their own graduate programmes, otherwise known as grad schemes, graduate training schemes. Often within the sort of science industry, a lot of the larger organisations offering grad schemes are pharmaceutical companies, perhaps food and beverage companies, FMCG companies, so fast-moving consumer good companies like P&G, Unilever, Reckitt, etc. So the one thing that I would just be aware of as a science student or recent graduate is if you are interested in working for a larger company, do check recruitment deadlines, do check if the companies that interest you run their own graduate programs, just because sometimes there might only be one application window during the year. But equally, there are a huge number of roles that aren't, graduate programs, graduate schemes. So life science industry, for instance, there are lots of smaller and medium-sized enterprises who dominate this field. So you don't just have to go down the graduate program, graduate scheme route. And actually, the majority of roles within science are not, based in kind of the bigger employers who run sort of big grad schemes. So lots and lots of different types of organisation that you might find yourself working in. One thing to think about if you are interested in working in science after you graduate is that sometimes postgraduate qualifications are requested. So for certain types of role, particularly things like research and development, if you're going to be perhaps in a lab-based role, you do sometimes find that employers might ask for a master's level qualification, sometimes a PhD qualification as well. This isn't always the case, so always check eligibility when you're reading job descriptions. For science-based graduate programs, you tend to find that employers don't need that master's qualification. Your undergraduate qualification will be fine. But just check, eligibility criteria before you put energy into applying for roles within science to help you understand whether you're suitable with your current skills and qualifications. So moving on to sort of technology, I guess the key message from us is that this is an industry that is growing exponentially. So 3 million people in the UK are employed in tech-related jobs, and that's increased by 11% in the last 2 years. And really, it's not surprising that the number of people working in tech roles has increased so much, given that the majority, if not all, organisations are increasingly reliant on technology to maximise their performance, to sell their product, to reach out to the right customers, etc. And again, similarly to science, what this means is because lots of organisations, businesses are reliant on technology, it means that there are lots of different types of industries that you might find yourself working in a tech-related role. For instance, financial services, manufacturing, retail, healthcare, defence, public sector roles, thinking about civil service, perhaps NHS as well. Now, there will be some, I'm sure, computing students amongst yourselves this morning who obviously will be looking to go into a tech-related role after they graduate. But equally, you don't necessarily need an IT-related degree to get into the tech industry. The technical skills that are required will really depend on the role. So you might find there are some roles which do specify a computer science related background, or at least experience perhaps in coding, for instance. So thinking about roles in perhaps software engineering, software development, data science, sometimes these kind of roles often ask for either the relevant experience or the relevant academic qualification. Some employers simply ask for perhaps a STEM related degree. So if you have a look in some of the vacancies that are advertised currently in My Career, the career service job portal, you will see a couple of IT tech related roles that ask for a STEM level qualification, a STEM qualification, rather than a computing IT specific qualification. But equally, there are some roles in tech that don't ask for that technical sort of background. So perhaps thinking about roles in maybe tech consulting, cybersecurity, these kind of roles, you often find that employers are quite flexible in terms of your degree discipline, your degree background. So key message is always read job ads carefully and check eligibility before you apply. There are lots and lots of IT and technology related graduate programs, I would say more so than in the science industry. There are lots of big employers who offer quite structured graduate training schemes across, again, lots of different functions, lots of different industries. For example, just for you here, telecoms, banking, retail, financial services, etc. So you are going to have potentially a bit of flexibility with regard to the type of organisation that you want to work for. So again, I think that's something to think about if you're interested in going into a tech-related role, given there are so many tech-related roles across the UK graduate labour market. Really try and think about what kind of company would you ideally like to find yourself working in. So moving on, we've talked a lot about, there are lots of different types of roles within the science and technology sort of industry. Now, we don't have a huge amount of time to talk through these today as part of this session, but one thing that I would definitely suggest, if you would like to broaden your horizons about the range of different roles available in these industries, do check out an external website called Prospects. Prospects have very, very detailed job profiles across, I think it's about thousands of different jobs, an opportunity to do some research. If you find a job title, you're not really sure what that means, what responsibilities you might have in that particular role, do cross-reference with the Prospects website. It gives you an idea of the range and breadth of job opportunities available in these industries. So it's a useful tool if you're at that point of research where you feel like you want to work in these areas, but you're maybe not 100% sure of the range of different job roles that are available to you, or how to maybe choose between different types of roles within these industries. Prospects is a fantastic starting point. So thinking about the science and technology industries, what is it that employers are looking for? Now, obviously the skills and experience that employers are asking for will vary depending on the company, depending on the industry that you're looking to work in. But generally there are lots of parallels across science and technology in terms of the types of skills and experience that employers look for ideally. So I'm not going to go through all of these in a huge amount of detail, but you'll see here that there are skills that you will be gaining naturally from your course. So if you're a science student, thinking about the lab-based side of your course, that analytical skills, the logical approach to problem solving, if something goes wrong perhaps in the lab, you have to repeat an experiment, etc. Attention to detail, another one, and perhaps if you're a computing student and you're looking at code, for instance, when things go wrong, when something doesn't look quite right, often you'll be required to kind of use those problem solving skills, but equally that attention to detail is going to be crucial. One thing that is increasingly important in both the science and the technology related sort of industries is teamwork and communication. So even though you might be a specialist working in a company, so you might be a research and development assistant or associate, perhaps working in a science company, you might be a developer working in a tech company. Ultimately, it's likely that you're not just going to be working with fellow scientists, fellow developers. You are probably going to be working as part of what we would call a multidisciplinary team. So working with people from maybe different academic backgrounds to you, different areas of specialism. And ultimately, it is going to be important to demonstrate those effective sort of team working skills. If you think about a role that you might be working in within science and technology, your role might be sometimes quite specialist, it might be quite technical, but actually you might have to communicate your work or your findings, for instance, to perhaps managers or other people within your organization who don't come from the same science technology related background. So the importance of communicating perhaps complex scientific technological concepts in a way that is perhaps easy for somebody with that non-specialist knowledge to understand is increasingly crucial, and particularly in sort of technology related roles, this is something that employers tell us they really need students to evidence on their CVs, their applications, etc. So it isn't just going to be about your scientific and your technical skills. Employers want to know, how do you communicate with people? How do you work with people? How do you kind of handle perhaps working on different projects at the same time, etc. How do you deal with perhaps that ability to work under pressure? So those are just a few ideas, just in general terms, really, to get you thinking about maybe the types of skills that you need to be thinking about evidencing on your CV and when you come to make applications. So a couple of tips if you are thinking about going into perhaps a science or technology related role. The first thing I would suggest is really think about your priorities. So if you want to be in a specific location, perhaps after you graduate, or ideally, you want to be in Newcastle or the North East, that's great because it gives you perhaps a focus when you come to start searching for opportunities. If you're flexible, fantastic. But if location is important to you, really start thinking about, well, how do I start perhaps building my network of contacts or researching companies that are in the area in which I want to work? If you're a scientist, really think about perhaps that lab versus non-lab. To what extent do I enjoy the lab-based side of my degree? Is this something that I would like to take forward in my future career? And just remember that not all science-based jobs are lab-based. You might want to think about, perhaps values. So when you're researching companies, often bigger companies will have on their careers pages about us sections or values or our mission. And they'll give you an idea of, the kind of principles and values that company stands for. Do they align with your own? Do you feel excited about the prospect of working in that type of company? What is it about that makes it so exciting? Think about company size. So often graduate schemes, graduate programs, you tend to be working in usually larger companies where you might be one of perhaps, 100 new graduates. For some people, that's an attractive prospect. For others, that isn't something that they're looking for. So really try and think about maybe the type of company that you might want to be working in. And equally, I think, be flexible, be open-minded. So yes, there are probably companies that are attending the session today that all of you will have maybe heard of. So an organization like GSK, for example, huge multinational pharmaceutical company. And big companies are attractive because people know about them and people know about what they offer. So you tend to find that there is a lot of competition in the application process. But equally, there are, just as many, if not more, valuable opportunities in other organizations, in smaller organizations that maybe don't quite always make the news headlines. So I would encourage you to really be open-minded and flexible with regard to the type of employer that you want to work for. There are lots of opportunities to research science and technology related employers on the Career Service website. So there are a couple of links here. One is for science, one is for sort of technology, computing related roles, just to help you understand, well, where do I start searching? Where do I start trying to research employers? How do I find websites that are perhaps a little bit more specialist, rather than kind of more general graduate job related sites? So do use those links provided on the slide there, just to help you understand where can I start researching perhaps more specialist opportunities. Now, if you are interested in working with a larger organisation, I would always say apply early and check recruitment deadlines. So some employers who offer graduate programmes, graduate training schemes, placements, internships, that kind of thing, sometimes they will recruit quite early in the academic year. So some employers will close their applications as early as now, November, December, for opportunities, graduate roles, placements that are going to start the following summer, September time. So particularly with larger companies, do check out their websites, understand what their recruitment timings are, just so that you don't miss that window of opportunity if there's a company that really interests you and they only have one recruitment window every year. Think about gaining as much experience as you can. So perhaps as science students, as technology students, yes, you are all gaining fantastic, valuable experience as part of your course, and that's a given. But if you think about the number of students that are studying science, technology related courses across the UK, across the universities in the UK and globally as well, you are going to be competing with a high number of students and graduates. So often it's the things that you can do outside of your course to gain experience, make contacts, that is going to make you stand out. You don't just have to do a placement or an internship. Some suggestions here perhaps to help, you could be doing something like a research studentship if you're maybe a science student. That's something that's quite common if you're looking to gain sort of research skills with a view to maybe going into a research role, PhD, etc. Could you think about part-time roles, volunteering, getting involved in things like hackathons? If you're wanting to go into a tech-related role but maybe don't have the necessary language skills, are there ways that you could sign up for free online courses in coding, for instance? So really think about what can you do outside of your time and feasibly as well, to really develop yourself and develop not just your skills, but equally your network of contacts. So be curious and talk to people who maybe work in roles which interest you. If you feel you don't have a huge number of contacts yet, obviously today's event is perfect. It's a chance to meet employers who are actively recruiting, make contact with those employers, perhaps keep in touch. But equally using tools like LinkedIn to help you perhaps build contacts with graduates of the university who are working in roles of interest to you. It's a fantastic place to build that network and find out more about the realities of working in, you know, a particular company or job role that maybe interests you. So really do try and think about what can you do outside of your course to really gain that experience this year. So that's really the end of this introduction. Just before we finish, here is a bit of an overview of what you can expect as part of today's panel of events. You'll see that there are 5 panels taking place today. So hopefully all of you will have time to attend at least a few of these taking place. The sessions will all be recorded and they will be made available on the Career Service YouTube channel. So don't worry if you do miss some of these. And be curious, be open-minded. There are probably companies on here that you haven't come across before. Listen to what they say, really try and reflect, you know, does that sound interesting? What is it about that sounds interesting? Could I do some further research into that company or industry? So do try and attend as much as you can today, but equally, if you do want to continue the conversation with the Career Service, we are always here for one-to-one support. You can book one-to-one appointments via My Career. You can book those online. You can also book face-to-face appointments as well. We also have a drop-in at level 1 Kingsgate, so 11 till 1, Monday to Friday. If ever you want to come and chat with us about your future career, your plans, where to find opportunities, or you'd like application support, we are here to help. Left you just with a couple of links here. So Target Jobs and the Prospects website, both of them have some quite interesting articles about getting into sort of science research, pharmaceutical companies, as well as information technology. So those might be quite useful resources if you are looking to research the science and technology related industries further. So that is basically the end of the session. So the first session is starting at 10 this morning. Just before we finish, I'm going to launch just a quick poll. We'd just really like to get your feedback. We know it's only been a short session. Just give us some feedback about today's session and maybe where you found out about our Find Your Future event series. If you wouldn't mind doing that just now. And then what I'll do is I'll stop the recording, and then obviously if anybody wants to ask any questions, I'll stick around for a few minutes to answer anything. So feel free, as I say, to put anything in the chat box, or equally unmute yourself to ask a question. That's completely fine. So thank you for taking part this morning. We know it's an early start. We hope that you really enjoy the sessions taking place as part of today's event, and we hope to see you in some of the sessions. So thanks everybody, and take care.